Welcome, everyone, to a gathering of water magicians. And with us today, we have Fiona Gardner and Darlene Teahen, and I can't wait to see where this conversation takes us with the sacred geometry that Fiona has managed to capture with camera and our imaginations with her beautiful photography from her microscopy work with urine and Darlene's fascinating research with aged Shivambhu or aged urine. I can't wait to see where this conversation goes. So without further ado, why don't we, Darlene, why don't you, since Fiona and I have spoken before, why don't you take it away to start off with here and just share a little of your background and your work, and then we'll go over to Fiona.
So I've been working as a naturopath for the last 11 years. I had a full office practice that I was seeing people and I was doing live and dry blood analysis on them. And then I also started incorporating energy work into that because we need to make that quantum leap in healing. We need to not just look at the physical body, but look at the energetic and spiritual too. And I find that combo together has really helped people make the leap. And then while I was doing all that, I was working on my PhD, and I originally started in neuroplasticity because I'm very interested in what makes shifts in the brain within trauma and different things. But then I ended up meeting Megan 5 years ago, and we met at a gathering, and I told her what I did, and she's like, "Oh, I really need somebody to look at my blood." She's like, "I feel amazing, but my family's really worried about me because I'm doing some different things." And when she told me what she was doing, I'm like, I've read about that 10, 15 years ago. I said, but I've never actually met anybody who was doing urine therapy. You're doing Shivambhu. I said, I'd love to check out your blood. Come to my office. I'd love to see what's going on with you. And as soon as I saw how healthy she was and how little she was eating and everything and how she glowed, I'm like, there's something here. And so then I started reading some books, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had to apply to change my topic and go through that process again with my university, and then I started on the journey of researching the benefits of the stem cells in urine, and the benefits, I think, more than just stem cells. But I had to start with a baseline study because there's not many studies out there. And so my study is a very baseline study, and I'm hoping that other people will be able to use my research and be able to bounce off that research in the future, because it's bridging the old medicine and the new medicine together, these newer studies that we're starting to do.
Yeah, your work really is fascinating, and it really is a testament to the why we share. Because you just never know where it leads, and with that whole relationship with you and Megan is so cool. Wow, this is so cool. I'm so glad to have you here, even though you're feeling under the weather. And yeah, Darlene was just talking about how fascinated she was by seeing your blood work and your vitality and how it got her to change into, well, the story. So really cool to have everybody here.
Hi everyone, thank you. I'm so glad to actually be in the room with everybody.
I know, hey, this is like a dream come true for me, so thank you all so much.
We're in extended parts of the world, so it's really great to be able to meet together like this.
Very fascinating. So Megan, did you want to say a few words about your just how you're feeling right now, and then we'll pass it over to Fiona and we'll get rolling on this.
I have been doing Shivambhu since 2013, and I had no idea when I started that it would lead me into interesting conversations. Like for example, with Darlene at a Christmas party, where I ended up saying, "Are you willing to test me? And are you open to working with someone who does urine therapy?" And this is partially being the scientists of our own experience. As one of my teachers always says, that we have to be curious about what's going to happen if I engage my body in this way. And that's part of what I find so fascinating when we start doing this, that it's somewhat the same for everyone, but yet there are these unique aspects that come out that are so different. And so there was somebody who I mentioned something this morning that was a quote from someone else about being in nature, and how being in nature cannot but be herself. And so nature brings us closer to our true selves. We become more ourselves and behave more as ourselves the more we spend time in nature. And with Shivambhu, we bring ourselves closer to nature because we bring more of ourselves into ourselves. And so there's that aspect where we are amplifying how much of us there is with the more we do this. And I guess that's the first thing that came to me today in terms of a little intro. I live in Canada. I teach on Shivambhu and healing methods, and I'm fascinated on how we all come at this with our own interests. So where Darlene and Fiona and me and you, where we all overlap, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me to join in today.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure having you. Your audio is a bit like not as crisp as it used to be. So I don't know what's going on there, but we got you on a low volume. So I'm going to just pass it on over to Fiona now and let her share a bit before we... Do you have... I don't know. I know Darlene has a limited amount of time today, and I was hoping to get a bit of Darlene's work that she's done on her PhD, and then maybe go to you, Fiona, for a little slideshow if you have the time for that. And hopefully Darlene will be able to stay for that whole... of that whole thing. So go ahead, Fiona.
Oh, where am I? What do you need?
Just little intro, just how you're feeling today and how you're feeling about the chat, and just the new gathering energy.
Oh yeah, I'm like so excited to be here. I love that we're creating a space where we can meet up and have conversations and share our experiences and everything else. I just think that's like so key for ourselves and for other people too, because definitely after our last talk I was finding people wanting to get in touch with me. Well, how do I start? Really I'm inspired. I didn't realize how beautiful this could be, after seeing images of urine. So it's kind of ignited people's imaginations and that reconnection with themselves. And to me that's the whole reason of this work and this art for me, was to show that divinity and that the beauty that we are, and totally in that space of what I was wanting to show today was trying to break the work up into pieces, because there's so much, and looking at patterns of information, sacred geometry, really looking at that energetic energy level, because for me that's key too. Working on the structure of the body and all them other things is great, but getting to that energetic imbalance, and how do we support that, and what does it actually look like, and how's that going to happen within me, that energy imbalance is going to be vitalized and keep its charge. So I had it's kind of a presentation on that. That's what I'm excited about, is patterns of information, because everything is created from a pattern of information. Sacred geometry, I always think it's, first of all, it's non-physical. It's out there in the waves and the vibrations and light and sound, and then there's something that initiates it to be manifest, and for it to be a visual and for it to be seen. So again, that it's kind of the magic of observing the urine, is seeing this non-physical information structure of what our realm, our universe, whatever you want to terminology you put to it, is how it's created. That the universe, it's everything's really simple. It has a pattern and it knows it works. Same with our bodies. We have a pattern. The body knows how it works and it knows how to heal itself. So they're the kind of things I'm excited about, and I think like we're all kind of in that that mindset, even we're these electrical magnetic beings, so what does that all look like, and blah 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 blah. So I kind of have like a presentation just to show that, and also so that people get an idea of like, what am I actually looking at? So it gives like a broader context, I feel, if I break it down into more bite-sized chunks of like, okay, this is what I have made up from observing plasma, so that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, it gives a really nice visual to the work that Darlene has done. And
Yeah.
for me, it was a really beautiful, I don't want to say marriage, but I love like the deep history of this that Megan brings to the table and has, and like the visual beauty of this sacred geometry that you share with the world, Fiona. And then Darlene, like, I love how simple your PhD study was. Like, why don't you go ahead and sort of share, a 10, 15-minute debriefing of your work, and we'll roll from there.
Yeah, so my study is I had participants, originally I had them, do the urine injections for 2 weeks, but the study took longer than 2 weeks because I had to measure all their vitals before, and I wanted to measure them after, and we'll get around to that after, but it ended up being a longer study because they kept making changes even after they stopped doing the Shivambhu, which I find is really remarkable, of only doing 2 weeks of 5 milliliter 2-week aged urine. So I had separate little dishes for everybody. I sent them home with a goodie bag when they came for their initial assessment, that they were peeing in it every day for 2 weeks, and then they were going to inject exactly 2 weeks. And that's just to keep things standard across the board for the methodology. I don't.
And when you say injection, sorry to interrupt here, I just want to clarify for everyone. When you say injection, what do you mean exactly?
It's needleless anal rectal injection. So you're just taking 5 milliliters into the syringe, no needle, and injecting it rectally.
Right.
Some people, do intramuscular injections of urine and things like that, but that's not what my study was. I just wanted to see, could I make a difference through injecting? Because a lot of people have digestive issues, and I thought if they're drinking it and it causes irritation, then I won't get a clear idea if it's helping them or not. And then other people, not used to the idea, how many participants can I get if they're not familiar with drinking it and thinking that it's a dirty substance? So injecting it rectally not only saved all that, but also goes straight to the portal valve, straight up to the liver, which is what my main focus of my study was.
So what were some of the things that you discovered through this, like sort of like general ones straight across the board that everybody, what did this reveal? Like the key takeaways?
The key takeaway is the major one is inflammation went down on the body. But there was all kinds of things that happened in many different people's bodies because we're all biochemically individually, but at the same time, it's all helping us go from here to here. So I took individuals that were healthy. Other studies can be done with cancer patients or diabetic people or, can I take a healthy person and make them healthier? Because it's a baseline study. Because this can prevent disease in the future. This can, and it's something anybody can do in their bathroom anywhere in the world, or even if you don't own a bathroom. I'm living in Guatemala right now, and many people don't even own a bathroom. And, but you can still have sterile urine come out of you and use it as your own medicine, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how easy this was. As soon as I heard your news, I was like on the phone. I'm like, okay, for all my friends out there that didn't want to drink it, I'm like, 5 ml. How easy is that?
It's only a
So,
teaspoon. So you're just putting a
yeah, it's
teaspoon
crazy.
in. It doesn't have to come back out. You're just absorbing that teaspoon into your body, into your being. Portal valve, all the other veins, it absorbs into your bloodstream fast. And you get the benefits without having to have the stigma of drinking it.
Right.
Something else that Darlene, 'cause I love her research, so I've talked to her about it quite a few times, but I remember you saying inflammation went down overall, but specifically in the liver.
Right, specifically in the liver. And so I was able to see that in the dry blood analysis. Some people were starting to, as they age, get liver inflammation because liver tends to take the brunt of everything that happens in our body. When there's digestion breakdown, when there's hormonal imbalances, it all usually stems from, congestion in the liver. So I thought if I can get, the liver functioning better, then the whole body can, function better.
And something else I remember, maybe you want to speak to this, was that blood oxygenation was better.
Yeah, so there's more oxygen in the blood all across the board. Now, I did have people do a breathing exercise morning and night, and that is to release. When there is any healing in the body needs different ways to release those toxins energetically and physically. So physically, they could have been, excreting toxins through their bowel movements and stuff like that. But energetically, they needed to be able to breathe out any emotions that come up from that medicine that goes into them.
And one of the things that happened too, which makes me smile because it's what people want, but it's maybe not the first thing they'd tell their doctor, but you said people were calmer and they were sleeping better.
Calmer, sleeping better. There were so many different things that were going well in everybody's life. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I had from the study is because there's a healer-healy relationship in every kind of thing that you do. And this quantum entanglement, and that kind of goes into the kind of spiritual talk that you and Fiona were having in the last podcast. This quantum entanglement. So if I have, all these people finishing a study at the same time and they having a healing reaction, then all of a sudden I'm having a healing reaction. And so many things happened in my life after that moment of everybody healing, because I, had regular people coming in my office all the time, so people are constantly healing and I'm, doing the work and everyone's working and things are going well, but having, those 12 people finish at the same time just kind of went poof. There was some magic that happened in my life where there was some big shifts. And because of those big shifts, I actually haven't even finished the paper on the PhD. I've done all the research, I've done all the hard part. The easy part, I haven't even had time to do because so many things have been happening in my life right now. So that is on the docket for 2025 is to complete that, because there's people emailing me from all over the world all the time, wanting a paper in their hand, and and that way other people can do research off of it too. So it's there,
Yeah, these group, it's kind of like a group workshop, that you ended up conducting with your PhD study. And often when you do something collectively together with people like that, there is like there's something that happens collectively, like to everyone there, aside from individually.
There was definitely a collective hive type healing happen with everybody that took part in that study. And that's magical on its own, let alone all the benefits that they received from it. So
Amazing. And that I really feel strongly that there is something definite. Well, Fiona's photographed it for us, but this crystal, like we use them in the devices that we're all using right now to make this conversation happen. So crystals carry energy, they carry information, and of course, why wouldn't they in our own bodies? It just seems so obvious to me. And really, Fiona's work is like the final, like the seal of validation in some way, because you have this visual. It's so beautifully visual what's going on in the body. So yeah, amazing. Do we want to say, Fiona, are you ready to do a little slideshow, or do you
Yeah,
want to
I
just?
can. Yeah, I can do that anytime. I just think that that Darlene, that's just incredible. It's incredible to have that out there. So powerful. Such a small amount that I imagine all like everybody's, their toroidal fields, that like coherence, that information getting stronger and stronger, and you're all in that, making an even bigger impact within your
Yes.
environment, with the way the vibrations and the frequencies actually change when somebody actually puts the urine back into their plasma, back into their body. It's an instant hookup.
Yeah, so frequency is the biggest thing. I would love to see studies done on frequency and the frequency of different aged urines and the frequency of that in your body and how your own body's frequency changes. Frequency, 100% is the medicine of now and medicine of the future and the medicine of the past, but we're all just realizing it now. And so I've been doing a lot of work in the last year with frequency, with my voice, and seeing how that affects people's cells and in the healing. And frequency makes such a difference to everybody's core being, because that's what we are. We're balls of energy, and every cell is vibrating, and healing is just going from one frequency to another. And so if I broke my arm, that part where it's broken is going to have a different frequency than the rest of my body. So if I can put a frequency that matches the rest of my body on that broken spot, then it can heal faster. And this has been proven. And cats sitting on you has been proven to heal with frequency. So why not the frequency of urine too? This is definitely a big interest of mine going forward.
Exactly, and what I've seen in like some experiments that I've done with frequency and vibration in that way, and then looking at the urine, because there's like no sound really coming out. There's nothing like for me to monitor or like study.
Right.
So the indicators that I see is real significant changes in color. So even like when we think of light, prisms, like rainbows,
Right.
there's a range of like colors. And color is so significant to the sound too. Yeah.
Because as we know, every chakra has a color associated with it, and every part of the body, and it's all resonating. We're just rainbow bodies, crystalline, rainbow beings, in this, having this human experience. And the more it all resonates together, the better we feel, the better we are. And slowing, it's not a matter of whether we're going to live together forever, but it's a matter of the quality of life while we're here. And, what can we experience and what can we give to others to experience? And so this exchange keeps happening as we kind of trickle out. We're not solidary, so much, singular beings like we used to be.
Exactly, we're all connected. So, and I always feel like, downloads I was getting that actually, like when you start like integrating your plasma and all these color frequencies start to shift and change, it is kind of like that. It's kind of activating that like rainbow light body. So then I was like, thinking about reincarnation and like being able to maintain and develop and hold our memories, like when maybe we move through our lives, so that maybe when we're reborn, we have more access to patterns and information. Yeah.
Well, I do believe the timelines are collapsing, and then we're going to have more access to, simultaneous timelines and past timelines that we haven't had before, as part of our healing. But I could talk about the spirituality of it. I've talked about it in a lot of other podcasts with a lot of people about, the intricacies of my study, but I think that is just, my study is just the tip of the giant frequency iceberg. of what we're pretending, our potential.
The crystallized
iceberg of potential. And you talked about another podcast, feeling better, and we all feel amazing. We all feel better, and do we need studies to prove that we feel better? Do you how many studies do you need to say that yes, I feel amazing? And I turned 50 this year, and I still haven't even started perimenopause. There's been no sign of anything.
Same here, Darlene. I just turned 50 this year also.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did in my 30s.
Right. Probably better.
It's just wild.
And I just had, for the first time, I just had some testing done just because I was interested, and there's no signs of perimenopause. I'm 47.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like everyone, not that you have to, like who knows,
No.
but it's just interesting. And that was one of the main reasons that one of the things that got me to try Shivambhu at the beginning, when I just heard of it and had no idea what it was and no idea what I was getting myself into, but it was that my teacher had, at the age of 52, was still not experiencing any symptoms of anything.
No.
Wow.
And that was part of what I went, well, wait a minute. Maybe things can be different than what I've been told. And so even just saying like, today I have a bit of a sore throat and a stuffy nose. Is it, it's not the case that Shivambhu is like, I feel fantastic 100% of the time, all the time, and everything is perfect. But it's that underlying sense of I can support myself and sustain myself and bring myself back to a state of peace and calm. And I couldn't do that as easily before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really worth mentioning that I'm reading right now about I have a bit of a background in jewelry and a diamond grader, and so crystals and stones have always been fascinating to me. And the Incas and the Toltecs, they thought of crystals as like petrified water, actually. And that these crystals were a source of universal power between humans and nature. And that by gazing into the crystal, they're able to see patterns and communicate with the stone and with the body and see past events that cause dis-ease. So I think there's so much. I mean, it's just amazing that we have the capability to look as closely as we can into this water and get these images from that. And I totally feel there's like the Shivambhu, that plasma is like this miracle water that our bodies produce that just bring you to a whole different level of health. When you say, Darlene, that you took people who were healthy, I'm like, yeah, I used to think I was healthy too.
Right? So people that weren't on any major medications, and people, within a certain age range, and people that weren't diagnosed with any major diseases, people, can I shift them from one spot to the other? And, I was very successful in that. Just within, the 2 weeks of them doing Shivambhu, let alone doing it for years, just 2 weeks.
Right.
And so that's what I was saying at the beginning, is at the end of my study, I wanted to measure, after the 2 weeks, I wanted to measure them 6 weeks after, and then a month, and then a couple months after. But I found 3 or 4 months after, people were still having shifts in their body.
It's a lot of integrating when you've never done anything.
Right.
You even though it's only 2 weeks, that's a huge thing to go from nothing to that, and then let your body integrate it.
Yeah. So I want to thank you.
And for it to be such a small amount, 5 ml.
Right. So a shout out to everyone who took part in my study, because they had never heard of it before, and they thought, this sounds a little crazy, but I'm willing to trust you and try it. So, it's good.
So were they close to you, or were these people like in a lot of different places?
Some were friends, some were clients, some were, I was at different groups, and I said, I'm doing this study if anybody wants to reach out to me afterwards. And I was just putting it out there so that I could get enough people to be able to conduct this study over, because I started with more people, because, some people life happens, and, they can't finish for whatever reason, that life gets in the way. So I wanted enough people that I could have, a good chunk to be finished with, that they could actually start with the 2 weeks before collecting the urine, and then do the 2 weeks, and then be able to come back and let me test them.
They were all
Right.
geographically close to where she was, though. They
Yes.
weren't all over the world.
Yeah, they couldn't be. I couldn't do the blood analysis and everything if they were all over the world to
Right.
check their vitals and check everything that I needed to check. So they had to be geographically close enough so that I could do what I needed to do.
Cool.
I had a question though too. Just I'm thinking like
Sure.
you and Fiona both have looked at things through microscopes, different kinds of microscopes, undoubtedly. But what were you primarily looking at? Just to give context compared with what Fiona's going to show on slides, like what were you looking at?
I'm looking at heavy metals. I'm looking at the quality of the red blood cells. I'm looking at the white blood cells, their health and quality. How many are there? Is there too many? Not enough? Because we all know it's part of our immune function and part of that. So stemming down from it, there was lots. I had a giant spreadsheet chart that every time somebody came in to get their stuff checked, I spent like an hour and a half on each person every couple weeks. And then with all those people, it was a big study to do just myself and to be able to take all that information in while I was also still seeing people in my own practice. So
Yeah.
We have a question here before we go on any further about women in particular. Our viewer is saying, heard if you drink your moon blood, you won't have any periods anymore. And I've not drank all of it, but I do still consume my plasma through my cycle and hasn't changed anything there. Does anybody else have any experience with that?
I don't have experience with it, but what I heard from some people in the community that are Shivambhu and like fruitarians and breatharians and stuff like that, when they have a very clean, barely anything diet, that their cycle stops, but it doesn't stop the reproductive cycle. They're still able to reproduce and all that.
And I do have experience with drinking moon blood, either like almost all of it during my cycle or just sort of more like sip looping with urine, or you're getting a little bit from various days. And I haven't noticed a difference in my cycle, where some people have noticed that really helped their cycle. It stopped cramping. It didn't stop the cycle, but it can really affect a cycle. I didn't have problems with mine to begin. I didn't have things I needed to fix. But I did feel just, again, it was another level of more integrated within myself because I'm accepting of, instead of being judgmental about what my body is producing and letting go of, right? And taking back whatever nutrients my body has put into that blood source. So I found it to be a really interesting practice, but it won't necessarily do that unless, like, the stopping, unless the person's body wants that and is ready for that.
Yeah. It is a detox. It's a detox for women, and it's not good or bad, it just is. So just like you have a little bit of a cold right now, Megan, it just is. It's your body doing its normal thing. And, we just have to allow the bodies to do what they need to do, and there'll be less, if there's less intervention of pharmaceuticals and all those interventions, then the body can regulate itself and heal itself on its own quite a lot easier.
Yeah. Fiona, do you have any experience with this? If you want to even dive into this topic.
Actually. I actually went into probably, and this was probably forced by doctors and stuff that I was under then. I actually went into a menopause at the age of 32, so everything stopped. So yeah, I was kind of a guinea pig for a doctor for a while, but that's just a total different story. But I've heard people that the cramping gets less. Maybe they don't bleed 1 month, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not like fertile. And then I feel like we've been programmed to believe such a story about our bodies as women, like, oh, you're going to go through menopause at this age and this is what it's going to be like for you, So I was kind of experiencing this thing like when I was really young, and so I didn't like take on that energy of, oh my God, am I like a 50-year-old body and I'm only like 32? So we've just, So there's so much to like untangle for ourselves once we start learning, like it's like taking in our plasma, using our moon flow in different ways to go, oh, well, actually, this is how our bodies are meant to be. You know, we can probably be fertile for a really long time.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't reach this age of, oh, you're worn out and old and used now. Let's replace you. You know, it's like, ugh.
And even once we hit menopause, I don't think it has to be this big traumatic thing. I think if our hormones are balanced, which the urine can help us do, if everything's in place, it should just be a lessening of the cycle. It shouldn't be this giant, hot flashes and mood swings and all these horrific things that women talk about. I love when people come to me before they get there so that we can get them all ready, and then they go through it, can sail through.
Yeah.
And so and it was in our last talk, but this whole thing about when we age the urine and the sediment at the bottom and the crystals on the side, and of course there is no study that says what it is, and even if there was a study, we'd have to study 50 people's sediment to see if it's the same in everybody, or if it really depends on your microbiome and what your body's detoxing, or all these things. So there is no one answer. I know that.
Right.
And you observed some things
Yeah,
when you were doing that.
So I had a lot of people asking me that question that were in the Shivambhu community. So when I was going to the conference calls, the world conference calls for Shivambhu, people were on either side. Some people said it was waste, and some people said it was full of stem cells and it was beautiful and you've got to use it all. And so the camp was kind of divided within that community. And then they asked me for my opinion. So I said, okay, well, let me take a look and see what I think is going on. And so when I looked at it under the microscope, what I saw was, there can be little teeny pieces of bacteria in the urine. Doesn't mean it's harmful for you, because then that's the next question. People are like, oh, it's got bacteria and it's harmful for your body. No, there's little teeny pieces of bacteria that can be floating in the urine, and then it gets engulfed by a white blood cell or a stem cell, and then when it gets engulfed, it gets heavy and it falls to the bottom, is what I noticed. And so I said to them, it is both. I said, it is that bacteria that's been encased, just like our whole body. Whenever we get too many toxins in our body, it puts a lipoid around it and pushes it over here until it has time to deal with it. And that's how we get cysts and lumps and bumps and moles. It's all because the body is protecting itself because we have too many toxins in the body. So I watched it do the exact same thing, encased it, and dropped to the bottom. So is there still more potential within that stem cell if you rub that white sediment on your skin? Possibly. Studies haven't been done on it, but yet it's a full cleaning of the urine is what it's doing. So that's how, as it ages, it just gets better and better. It becomes its own microbiome that just gets richer because it cleans itself as it goes.
Oh, here we go. We got something. That totally makes sense to me.
Right.
Like, because I used to also study fermentation, and that's exactly the process that's happening there. It's like a natural detoxification process that's happening.
Because we're full, just like something that's fermenting, we're full of good and bad bacteria, and then the body's working in harmony to make it cleaned up and in usable sources so that we can get the best out of it. And one of the previous podcasts I was doing, somebody commented saying there's no such thing as bacteria. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no such thing as bacteria in the body? And I cited all the healthy bacteria that can be in the body and all the unhealthy bacteria that can be in the body. We are science experiments for sure.
So another question, though, then, is there some people who filter and some people who don't?
Right.
And I got the question, if you're filtering it, aren't you filtering out the stem cells?
Right. I would lean to the side of not filtering it, only because I notice that people that filter all the time, it runs the risk of little bits of the cloth or whatever they're using to filter can get in the urine, and that's when you tend to get a mold. More often than not, people who filter tend to get mold on the top of it. And that's because foreign substances have been put in the urine, and then it's having to deal with it. And if it's moldy, I tend to say, there's lots more where that come from. Just throw it out. If you've got moldy urine, you've got a good resource of it to get as much as you want, and make a fresh jar and start aging that again.
Okay, so
But does it filter out the stem cells? I think it keeps reproducing more stem cells. So those stem cells that take out the bacteria and anything that's unwanted and pulls it down to the bottom, well, then it's reproducing more. And what I have found with my aged urine, so I moved over a year ago, and so I had to start again with a fresh batch because I moved internationally. And what I've been doing is taking my fresh, as my aged one is getting down bottle, I've been putting some fresh into it, and I find it kind of ages faster when you add fresh to the aged than aging fresh on its own. So I just have a cycling loop of my aged going.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
like a starter culture. in a
Right,
way.
right, and it cleans it up faster, and it's pure to use, and to put on my skin, and everything I want to do with it. And
So, I mean, part of my asking was because I do filter, and I've gone through periods where I don't filter and where I do filter. I don't get more mold because of that, but I've been doing this for 6 years now, so I've
Right,
a pretty good
and you might have
system set up.
you probably have a good system, and other people are still not quite sure what they're doing, but yeah.
Yeah. So
And do you
there's
find-
part of, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, do you find benefits in filtering it?
I do because I find that it ends up being happier faster in that sense. Like if I leave it and the sediment just builds up and I never filter out the sediment, I can't tell where it's at. Whereas after I filter it, then I can tell by how fast it produces sediment the next time, how far along it is in what it's
That's
doing.
interesting.
So the stuff that I have that's 4 years, almost 5 years old, is from January 2020. It doesn't produce sediment anymore in any visible amount. Like it's almost like there's tiny grains of sand, a few, but that's like I filtered it, like I don't know, was it 9 months ago now, and it's not producing more sediment, and it's
Because
4
it's
years old.
because you believe it's completely clean by that point, and it's just its own.
It's happy. It's happy.
And
Yeah.
it still has that ripe.
It's so musky. It's floral.
Wow.
This is like perfume. This stuff is my most perfumed bottle. This is what I'm going to send Fiona some samples of. And
Wow.
I currently have it sitting on Sacred Geometry as well to just kind of like
Cool.
frequency it up. But it is the thing where if I use it anywhere, it changes me immediately. It's such a different product. But it was just someone asked me this stem cell question. I'm like, I don't know how tiny a stem cell is and how big a filter you would need to have or small to change.
Yeah,
that.
I can't imagine it would filter out the stem cells because they're microscopic, right? We're looking at it
That's what I
at 100 times under the microscope.
Yeah, I think we're getting into the territory of like the mask filtering stuff
Yeah.
out. I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, just in that general sense of like, I don't know. So that was
Getting
just,
the big chunks out.
yeah.
That's so interesting. I did notice in the past, like I had to use up some of that before I moved. But when I would do a water fast or a fruit fast or something like that, that would be like prime urine. It would be like the best urine going, and I try to use that for everything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same with this in terms of hang on to is I just did it again, didn't it?
You're back.
Okay, is my audio
Are you
still-
having trouble, Fiona? Maybe we iron out the kinks of it,
Yeah.
and we'll get that organized for next time. I don't want you to miss out on. Or
Yeah, I
not
don't
miss
know
out, but-
why. I mean, I'm just not technical, so I don't know what's actually going on. I know it shared it last time, but I just don't know what's.
So Megan, there
worry
is
about
a
it.
question
Bummer.
in the chat there about
Yeah.
cooking or warming. I wouldn't cook or warm it because that's going to destroy some of the goodness to it. Just like
Actually, I have a question about this because I think,
Yeah.
Fiona, you were talking about this, about how there's things in the plasma that are heat resistant.
interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely this is something that I want to start doing, is heating urine up and looking at it under the microscope. Um, because just even in like alchemy itself, heat is used to generate and
Yes.
transmutate. Just all different things come from the heating process. And also when we're looking at even the microbiology in our urine, if we look at the level of like somatids, which is indestructible, survives really heat, cold, freezing, and that whatever it is, whether it's heated or frozen, it doesn't necessarily destroy it. It just transmutates into something different. So I've been wondering about the heating process,
Yeah.
of how that potentializes the elements that are all in there, specifically like the urea. What's actually going on with urea? Because to me, I feel that's kind of like the magic, the urea. I don't think we really understand and know a lot about it, but it's like a big subject that's really like has so many different tendrils for me about what that is. So what's the process of what changes, what looks different? Because I don't believe anything's destroyed. I think it just moves to a different
I
balance and a
agree.
different level.
For the last at least year and a half now, Lee and I have been heating up our plasma and reducing it to a quarter, a third, a quarter, actually like getting to reduce it even more now. And that's what we use on our skin. I call it the other Shivambhu or urine, I call it raw. And I don't put raw on topically, like per se. Like I do wash my hair with it and these other things. But after I get out of the shower, I use my reduced plasma as my, we call it lotion. And that's what we use topically on our skin for the last year and a half. And Lee couldn't go in the sun before without that. And we also felt the raw plasma being too drying on our skin, actually. And I feel a much better level of hydration. And I also use this for brushing my teeth, the
Interesting.
reduced plasma,
And
which I love.
this discussion also, I mean, this is the 4-year-old,
Wow, that looks beautiful.
but can you see how clear it is?
Yeah.
Like it's just, yeah. This was
Oh
January.
man,
January
I'm jealous.
But like this question of skin, like I had dry skin my whole life. I started putting fresh on, and all of a sudden I didn't. I mean, it probably took a month or two, but suddenly I never bought any more moisturizer. I never had to buy it again. So fresh immediately shifted my skin. And then when I started 6 years later, when I started putting, or 5 years later, when I started putting the Evolved on my skin, it was more like oil. Like it went into my skin at a totally different level. And I mostly put Evolved on now, but I did 5 years of Fresh every single day, once or twice a day. So by the time I started putting Evolved on, my skin had changed. And then I was in a community where there was a lot of Ayurveda and everybody was doing oil massage, which I fully endorse and think is amazing. But I tried a few times to put it on, and most of the oil would just sit on top of my skin because my skin was already hydrated. And so I wasn't getting this luscious soaking in of oil. I just ended up having to wipe a lot of oil off of my skin. But this is part of the interesting thing again, where it's like, is the Shivambhu helping all of us in our skin? Yes. But who are we to begin with? And what element, how was our relationship? What conversation do we develop with it? Where for me, Fresh and Aged are great on my skin. And I have tried the Reduced. I don't dislike it, but it didn't do anything noticeably different immediately. And so I haven't pursued it, partially because I live with other people and they don't want me cooking it on the stove because then they complain about the smell. Whereas you and your partner, it's the two of you, and you both are fine with it. And so it's easier, in that sense, to keep going. But your skin immediately said, it likes the Reduced. So off you go, and the Reduced is working. But we wouldn't know that there was that difference unless we shared stories.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah,
point, Megan.
I am a huge advocate for the Reduced on skin, and that's actually the Damar Tantra is where we got that, even the notion of doing that from, and they explicitly say in there for topical use, you reduce it. And so, yeah. And we use it actually now, like now I do use the raw Shivambhu to, like, when I was doing more cooking, before I would rinse off our rice or any beans or stuff like that, and my vegetables and all of that, I use my Shivambhu as a vegetable food, whatever I'm washing.
Yeah.
I wash with it. And whoever has the cleanest plasma in the house right now, I'm like putting a good generous splash of that into our coffee right now while we're still drinking it. So we make our coffee with one of our Shivambhus, and I really like it. You get a little bit of froth on the top of your coffee. It's pretty interesting. And I actually like the taste of the coffee better with using like a nice clear plasma than without. It gives it some kind of body. But I did a bit of cooking with it in the past, but you can kind of like overload I don't know, it's like something about the more you are on this plasma journey, your relationship with food totally changes. And so I was cooking a little bit with it, but then I stopped because I just needed to make a differentiation there between food and my plasma, just to have that break in between the two.
One thing I've noticed with looking at like the fresh urine and the evolving urine is fresh urine looks different every day from our urine, depending on, what we're eating, what we're drinking, how we're feeling, our emotions, what we're thinking about, like so many things, because it doesn't necessarily look the same every day. It kind of changes. It has like different things, different information. But when you're looking at evolving urine, it's because with the images that I wanted to show, it was kind of wanting to show that like within evolving urine, there's more electrical magnetism. There's more going on. There's more things being formed. There's things are just it's a whole different game changer. So we know that evolved is very unique and has some real special qualities as compared to fresh. Not saying that fresh isn't, because all that information is still stored in the fresh, but the evolved urine over time has been able to, especially when like looking at patterns that so when we start taking our urine, how I see it is like that energy shift. There's an energetic shift completely. It's kind of like that electromagnetism within us is like boom, it's like switched on because the voltage increases. So then this has given us it's the antennas that I see moving through the structure of the plasma, these coherent structures, then that have more availability and access to information. So there's a change going on, something significant is actually happening, and it's kind of like it holds that charge. Like we were saying, you can start urine therapy, take a break, but that healing is still going on because that charge is still there. It's still connected and it's still building on that, and the body's still healing. Sorry, I was rambling a bit then, but yeah.
Yeah, but that made me wonder something. I'm wondering, let's say you have aged sitting around, and then like months later you get sick with something. I'm wondering if the quantum entanglement will recognize that illness, even if you haven't put new stuff into it, and be able to give it what you need.
I believe so.
I think so.
Yeah, only because I believe that because of just specific experiments I've been doing with evolved urine, and not necessarily mine, other people's. So seeing how, and the story I'm always telling is about my friend who was pregnant. I received her evolved urine before she got pregnant. And I looked at it briefly when she gave it me in the summer, and then I didn't look at it again until like Christmas time coming into January. And that's when I was seeing other information being presented. The other part of evolved urine, it kind of gives this landscape, this context of a real significant image. I call them spiritual images. I don't know what else to call them. It's an image, and with it comes a flood of information. So in this specific information that I was looking at in her urine was, this is a baby girl that's going to be born in September, and there's all these significant things about it. And I was like, oh, come on. How can I? Because I'm a skeptic too. I question it all. I'm like, did I just make that up? You know? So I sent her that information, and she'd found out the week before that she was pregnant and was going to be giving birth in September. So to me, that was like, wow, that's real specific. We talk about quantum entanglement, that it's still connected to her, that information. So whatever is changing with her is changing within that substrate. So that if she took that, so I believe that information would be in there. The body knows exactly what to do. It'll take it in and do what it needs to do. I do believe that. I'm just so grounded in that that's just the way it is. I feel
there's a story too of somebody who has this jar of, I think it was like 11 years old aged urine that he was using very sparingly, but on people who were really, really sick, and they were seeing some amazing results. And this was someone else's 11-year-old aged urine that was having these amazing healing properties. So part of what I've come to understand is that on the one hand, our urine, our Shivambhu, our plasma, is very specific to us, who we are, what we're feeling. It's to our person. And also, if plasma is placed on any skin, the skin goes, oh, you're plasma. And the plasma goes, oh, you're skin. And they just know what to do. And it doesn't matter whose it is.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Megan. And that is actually how crystals work. Like if you use crystals in therapy, you put them over that part of the body that you don't even need to put them over that part of the body. You can actually put the crystal in front of a picture of the organ, a picture of a organ, like the image of a heart, and you put the crystal in front of that, and then it takes that energy, and then you can put that onto the body. And nature knows what to do. It knows where the healing needs to happen. And I really agree that you can take someone else's Shivambhu, and I would definitely not have a zero problem with using that. The plasma that any of you women have stored in jars in your rooms right now on my own body. Yeah, definitely. And it's like, we're warehouses of this beautiful energy. If there's ever a crisis in your neighborhood, all of us Shivambhu people, they would do this at the temples. Actually, the people in the village would go up to the temple if they were ill, and they would ask them if they could have the plasma from the monks, because they knew they had a clean diet and all of this. You hear old stories of that, actually.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm fascinated with, that has been more like things that I'm looking at in this work that I'm doing with observing the urine is gold. Because I noticed how, like, in evolving urine, there's more of a gold component. And other different things. I'm doing different other experiments around what does affect that in our plasma to create more gold even. So the whole thing about having that gold like on our skin, because my thing is, if you're not drinking it, put it on your skin. Like the same thing when we were babies in the womb, that was the main access point, was the skin. Most of it was going through the skin. When the baby swallowed, some would go into the body that way, but it was mainly crossing that skin barrier, because the skin, when a baby hasn't created its harder Oh, it's just softer. Things can cross over the skin, so much easier. We look at that skin defines our shape and everything else. So you have that going on. So for me, the skin is a big deal. And I feel like when we are actually using the evolved urine, that gold is really strong within that medium. And that's where I feel like this is really good for blocking those non-native electromagnetic disturbances, all the electrical noise that we come under, the radio, microwave, cells, Wi-Fi, and it repels the magnetic fields, and so it acts as an energetic protector with the skin. And then the gold can harness the energy of the sun and everything else. So I feel like it's major for that protection of the body.
There's a really great
and I think it's beyond even making a shield for that negativity, that you're actually beaming out the positivity. You're radiating something back in a positive way.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Megan.
There's a podcast, Michelle from Michelle's Healing Home interviewed me 6 months ago-ish. She had come across urine therapy and embraced it wholeheartedly and has now done quite a bit on it. But she and her partner and another friend did a podcast where they went really deep into the esoteric elements around Shivambhu and the notion that you've mentioned as well, Fiona, just like, the symbol, the old alchemical symbol for urine. And they found a lot of arcane information that was really fascinating. And one of the things was this idea that if you were to take, and I forget where it came from, but it was very, very old. So it's just this idea that to actually take gold and try to possess it, to take it out of the earth and put it somewhere in a safe in your home, was stealing the light from everyone. There was something inherently collective about gold, that it belonged to everybody.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about it being in the urine that way, I'm like, well, it's like I get goosebumps on my back, because it's this idea of we all have this gold within us. And so our natural response to finding gold in nature should be to celebrate it and not to go, how can I take it away from other people and hide it?
Well, ancient Egyptians actually believed that the gold was the flesh of the gods, and consuming gold brought them closer to God and their own divinity.
Yeah, and I actually think that they were talking about Shivambhu when they were talking about consuming the gold. Yeah.
Well, maybe when all our urine goes into all those chemical places, maybe they distill the gold out of the urine. The things we don't know what they do with that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the Inca, that word is ray, in a ray of light. So they were thought of as illuminated ones, and that they were created by light. And so it's like consuming the plasma back. It's like awakening the light codes that are buried in human form. I really feel that.
That resonates with me a lot.
Same.
Yeah.
And that's what I see in urine, because part of my presentation was looking at, because I have clients who, before urine therapy and after urine therapy, and what things that change in that. So you can change how their structure changes, that their plasma becomes more structured, becomes more geometric, there's more light, there's more vitality, there's more momentum, there's it shifts and changes drastically in that way, and that their body then can receive more light, transmit more light. So all those crystal capacitors get charged and turned on, giving out their information.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think people don't need to there's a bit of talk in the chat room about how long to age things for and what aged is. And I think with Darlene's work, like just showing that 2 weeks, which is a really short amount of time, really, to call something aged. 2 weeks is a really short amount of time. So we know that's having an effect even at that young age. But even doing this, like, no, there's no need to wait even 2 weeks. Like, you can start aging some, but in the meantime, you can just use your fresh, like what Megan, her first experiences were pretty much all with fresh. She never really did a lot with evolved or aged. And
Nothing. Yeah.
like the longer the better, as everyone can attest to in this space here today.
The things with aging, because I get this question, I teach on this particular one, and there's so many different things that people read here and there, and then they don't know how to put it together. And so one of the pieces for me is the books that have been written, specifically John Armstrong, because he helped people who were on the edge of death. Like, they had no other hope, they were sent home to die, and his book, Water of Life, is about the people who, this was it. If this didn't work, they were going to pass. And for him, he said 4 days was the minimum aging. So like, sometimes people will say to me, "Oh, I'm drinking aged," and they'll say it's from yesterday. Well, yes, it's older than it was. Like, it's older today than it was yesterday. In terms of its potency, in terms of what's going on, it says a lot to me that John Armstrong said 4 days minimum, because he was dealing with people who were going to die. And if he was willing to wait 4 days for people who were that sick, I think generally they used other people's while they aged the persons themselves for 4 days. But he noticed a real difference. It's like, if he was going to rub it all over their body for hours at a time to try to help them, that 4 days made a difference. The other thing is, the first 7 days to 14 days, depending on you and your system, that's when it's going to smell the worst. So, can you use it at 1 week? Of course you can. But if you can wait to 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the smell is going to go down, which will make it easier for you. You won't be as self-conscious, and you will not worry about other people potentially smelling you, if that's an issue. But if you don't care, that's great. But that's one of the reasons to wait a little bit longer. It's an aesthetic reason. And that you don't want to scare yourself off of using it or feel at all bad about it. You want to have really good positive experiences with this. So set yourself up for positive experiences, because that makes it easier to keep going. We're making it sound, we're like, oh, we've been doing this for ages and it's really wonderful and we all love it and it's so easy. This is a taboo, deeply ingrained, socially conditioned disgust mechanism. You want to create positive experiences.
Yeah, that's so far behind me now. It's so true, hey? Like, that's so far behind me now. Yeah.
So I do find incense works really well if there's any smell. If anybody's just starting this and they have some smell, incense, just putting it around yourself, if you put it on your body, works amazing.
Yeah.
So something that I've noticed with, like, so because most of my, like, observation has been with evolved, the evolved urine, and watching what are significant, like, shifts and changes. And definitely, like, after 7 days, there's real specific changes that are actually happening, but also noticing that, and so this is in relationship to when we're in the womb as well, that there's trimesters of the evolving urine. So, like, we think at, like, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, there's real significant markers and changes that are happening in that whole process too. So at the point of, like, when it's hit that 9 months and it's that rebirth, then it just takes on a different dimension. And also what I've done is I've aged people that don't do urine therapy and gauge the different changes. And it what I was looking at was theirs was taking a much longer time to reach this 9 month point. So if somebody had been ingesting and using their urine, it evolves like this to 9 months, but the persons that isn't doing that, wow, we're at 2 years and they're like at that 9 month where maybe things are, starting to happen. So again, that even in that evolving, everything's unique and individual to that person, depending what their experience is and what they're going through and how their plasma's evolving while it's outside their body.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah, because not everybody doesn't evolve we don't all evolve and develop at the same rate. But there's something about when you ingest your plasma and you're making that reconnection, that's that reconnection with self, the reconnection with divine, the reconnection with spirit, blah, 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 blah. The process is more timely, I'd say. I think it's timed the way it's meant to be. Whereas if we're not, we're kind of sluggish, slow, late developing. I don't know, these are all different things that I think about with observing it.
One of the things that Lee and I have noticed, I think the most impactful thing that we've done for our plasma is eliminating sodium chloride out of our diet. Really changed the game with our plasma. And I don't have a microscope to see it, but just the taste of it, how much better it feels, how much better it feels on my skin, and just all around, the odor and everything related with it has been a pretty big transformation. And going off sodium chloride for me in particular at the beginning was like coming off of a hard, like how people describe coming off of a hard drug. I was having like withdrawal symptoms from sodium chloride. It was pretty amazing, and one of the most impactful things I've done is remove that. Just to put that out there.
Yeah, I haven't fully removed it, but every year that I've done this, I've cut back and cut back and cut back, and my body just tells me it's so vocal through the Shivambhu.
Yeah.
About not needing it, not wanting it, and yeah. Then the more I talk to people as well who've been doing this for longer periods of time, it's like we all end up saying pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the body
amazing.
is able to make whatever mineral element that it actually needs once you start reintroducing the plasma into the body. That the body's like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and we get drawn to things more. Like I'm putting my jars out in like the moonlight and the night sky and the energy of the stars and just your own intention, like the work that what's her name, Veda Austin does with putting her intention into just water and freezing it and seeing the crystals that form from that. And so I imagine that same thing is happening with our plasma when we're consuming it, and the more you consume it and the more love and connection you feel there. And just through this sharing and through the sharing of all of your work, you beautiful women, that energy is coming through now too, because I'm thinking of the images that I've seen of yours, Fiona, and like I think of the work that you've done, Darlene, and all of the people that have done this with you, Megan, and it comes into your own space, all of this collective energy of the people in this Shivambhu family. And yeah, there's like that vibration. You're getting what you need, what the body's, the Shivambhu is creating for you what you need to be in that balanced state, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I haven't fully given up salt.
Resonance.
I think it just matters what your body needs at any given time. I think, as a child, I was very mineral deficient, and so, it can take time to get what your body needs, but definitely through the urine you can get more. And so everyone, just like you were saying, Fiona, everyone gets what they need at their own rate,
Yeah. Well, and whether it's I was saying this to somebody anyway who doesn't practice Shivambhu, but is a yoga practitioner, meditator, chants, does things like that. And we were talking about what is normal. And if you're someone who does spiritual practices, then you're going to change your physiology. If you do yoga, if you do breath work, if you meditate, you're going to change your physiology over time, doing those things for years and years and years. When we add Shivambhu into the mix, and we're consuming something that is studied, but not studied in relation to how our bodies work with it, then we're also going to change our physiology in ways that are yet unknown. And so Fiona's work is groundbreaking in looking at what is it doing at this microscopic level? What is it doing on a crystalline sacred geometry frequency level? But in the growth, going from subtle to gross, the gross of the physical body, how does that affect what we see? And we don't know yet. We're guessing. We all guess. Other people who've done it guess because we see vitality in each other. So there's an aspect of vitality there. But even just things like people, it's like we all answer the same questions over and over again, but people say, oh, I've been doing enemas and I heard that, coffee enemas are drying. Should I worry about doing urine enemas? It's like, no, the urine enema is incredibly hydrating. Why? Partially because it has sodium, not sodium chloride, but sodium, potassium, magnesium. It's got your electrolytes. It's got exactly what your body needs to maintain electrical stability. We need electricity in order to have the frequency. So like all of these things are working in a really different way. And even just this notion, and this is a bigger jump and I'd love to have a conversation about this some other time, but I was looking up water poisoning, water toxemia. Because if you drink more than about a liter, 800 milliliters to 1,000, so just under a liter to a liter in an hour, that's about all your body can handle. Your kidneys can't do more than that. And so people have been known to die for drinking 6 liters in 3 hours, right? It's too much. And one of the reasons that's stated that it's too much is it disrupts the electrolyte balance. It specifically disrupts the sodium balance and the cells swell. Well, now I'm thinking there are days when I drink an awful lot of Shivambhu. But what's different about drinking 3 liters of water versus drinking 3 liters of Shivambhu?
It's structured,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's structured and it has all of the
different.
salts, it has all of the electrolyte balance in the right way. So even this, it's like, what does it mean? Like at what point, of course we can always take it too far. We can take everything too far. Toxicity is in the dose, it's not in the element. So can we still drink too much liquid, even if it's Shivambhu and it's wonderful? Yes, I think we can, but our body should also say, stop now, I need a break, give me a minute.
Yeah, I think there's some discomfort that comes from these people that are drinking that volume of water. It's almost like forcing it down like like it's, yeah. And they say the body's like what, 70% or whatever the percentage is water. I'm like, okay, and like you were saying, Megan, let's define water now, because that is we're not H2O. There's a lot more going on in there.
Yeah. And that's the problem. So many people are drinking that much water because they are inherently dehydrated from all the processed foods, from all the cooked foods, from everything
From
they're
all
eating.
the bad water.
and from the bad water, they are massively dehydrated, and they're like, I can't drink enough, I'm so thirsty. And people come to me all the time, and I'm like, well, let's structure it. And so if they're not quite up to the urine yet, I'm like, let's make teas out of it. Let's infuse it with fruit. Let's structure this water so that you can actually absorb it.
Yeah. Watermelons is my go-to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Fiona.
The water we drink is not what actually hydrates our cells, our tissues, or our muscles. It's intracellular hydration, which comes from our body actually producing our own water. That's what hydrates our body. And that's why when we're taking in plasma, we are taking in the same water that our body has made, which is very different to the water that's exterior to us that we drink. It has different elements, it has different components, it has levels of deuterium in it, which is a subject that I'd want to go into later as well. and how that changes things. That the water people are drinking is actually what's dehydrating them. And whether they structure it or not, I don't know if that is really going to help in any way, because it's more to do with the elements that are in the water when they go in the body. Then how is the body having to manage all these elements? Has the body got enough vitality and energy that it can cope with what's in that water that we're drinking, that it can go, okay, I can isolate this, I can deal with that, it can transmute that? Or is the cells, because the body's so fatigued and tired from years of whatever disease or problems or blocks that they've had, that, oh, I can't deal with that, I'll go stuff it somewhere else until I have the energy to deal with it? Because one thing that plasma does when we introduce it, we start to be able to invest our energy, because the plasma takes over energetic processes, enzyme processes that maybe we are using because the body's trying to get energy. But once we start putting the plasma in, that's pure energy. You're giving the body energy. It's able to create energy from there instead of taking energy from somewhere else in the body or having to do a process to get energy. So water is really key, the water that you're drinking. And I'm all for people like, yes, structure your water, do all that, intention, prayer. Because you're going to have an impact on it, but you're not going to change that. I don't think you're going to change the elements that are in there of how the body needs the strength then to deal with that. Does that make sense? I don't know if I ran
That
it.
makes sense to me, and that's definitely my experience. When I eat watermelon, it's like drinking to me, fruit. So like really, when I'm thirsty, I would go for a really watery fruits like watermelon, and grapes are another really good one. And actually, you don't actually need a lot to get that hydration. When I eat a pomegranate, it's amazing how quickly that clears. And they say, that that's good for your blood. And I have to agree, because I'll eat a pomegranate and my plasma, it's like eating a coconut. Like my plasma is just clear and tastes so great after that. And grapes are another, I think this is the way to hydrate. And when you take these kinds of fruits in, the plasma that you produce is so, it's nuts. And as we were all saying, the first cup of plasma that you take into your body, you kind of never go back. Like the more you stay on top of that, and the more regular you are with that, and the more care you give yourself, and just make sure that you're drinking a nice plasma, at the beginning, like have some fruit, do a little fruit flat fast, and then take that water back in. You never go back to that plasma that you had at the beginning. And even a friend of mine with their son noticed this. The first plasma that her son drank, and she took some of it too to just see, where he was at. And it's never been like that again. Like he just hasn't gone back to that. It's changed. It's just changed. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, you might want to mute if you're going to type.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I got to
it's
get
okay.
going, but it's been a lovely chat with you guys.
Oh, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Darlene, for making it, and I hope to do many more of these. And thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And I love you guys all, and we'll see you in the future.
Bye, Darlene. It's so nice. See you. Bye.
Bye.
I can hang out a bit longer if you ladies want to just chat a bit longer.
Well, I think we have some really good topics for some other discussions, including that, like,
Yeah.
how does water function? What have we noticed as we've shifted the kinds of liquids that we take in, and what difference has that made?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it, even there, it's like steps, right? In terms of where are we at with how many different things can we take on? Again,
We need a lab.
we do need a lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, I'm just thinking about myself. Like I didn't really change I mean, I did little things as I went along, but there were points where I went, no, I've changed too many things in my life. I just need to not have to be changing things all the time for a little while now. Like, I just need some stability. I need to get used to this. And then at a certain point, then I was ready to change another piece about it, right? So just starting to work with Shivambhu at all is such a major life change, that to feel like people need, like, there's no comparison. We can't, like, if anyone's just starting or they're just at the beginning, it's like, don't compare
for sure.
yourself to anybody else. Just start and see what you need and what information you get and how you feel.
Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. And everyone's journey in this is unique to them. There is no one way. There's no one way to do it. And there's no what to expect. Expect the unexpected. Like, the way the detox expression happens is totally unique for everyone, and happens, as you were saying before, Megan, like, happens over years, it's not like one woman asked, how long does the detox last? I'm like, the rest of your life, There is no end here. There's just the journey. And I really resonate with you, Fiona, on the whole water thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely not something that was in my sphere until I did something specific. And then it just opened up this huge space. And I feel like I think we all have different pieces of information of how this, say the word practice, informs us, because it's also informing on our own patterning, of our own incarnation in a sense. So that's why I have a really kind of, sometimes I just call it cutthroat. I'm like, no, this is just what I believe. I do not expect anybody else to believe it. This is just the way I'm being informed. And this is the way I'm being moved forward. And I'm just gathering the information. We're all being informed on so many different ways with this patterning, this sacred geometry, the crystals, the information, the resonance. We all have such key pieces to it.
Yeah.
Of how the possibilities, the potentials, and everything else. And that's what really excites me. So when I see something new, something different, and it has such a huge response in that way, I'm like, oh shit, okay. Where because that, and I feel, when we were saying, like, we've been on these paths for a certain length of time, we don't actually know, where's it taking me? Where am I being guided? What's, because we shift so significantly once we take it in, I especially remember that fearlessness. So, fear, being afraid, and all them other stuff. So it opens up a whole new space for energy to come in and new information, because you dispose of all the other stuff because it's not relevant anymore. It doesn't have a space with me anymore because it's just not relevant. So where am I being moved to? And honoring each person's path with it, and I'm the same. I want to set somebody up for success, to be consistent, to stay within themselves and not have these goals, or oh, I want it to be this way. It's like, okay, let's take it in these steps. So I have a specific, when I'm with a client, again, after speaking with a client, I'll put them in a specific direction, because you want people to be successful, because it's like, ooh, what information, we've all got different information to share. Such juice.
Yes.
Such gold.
That's really key, what you're saying there. And I'm sure Megan will agree. It's really tailored to each person that you're working with, and setting them up for success, definitely. And the path is different for everyone.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, maybe this is a great spot to just wrap it up for this time. And we'll sort out the screen share thing for next time, Fiona. Lee and I will work on that and figure out how that works ourselves and help you out there.
Awesome. Thank
But thank you so much for joining me. That was awesome that the four of us could be here today, and thank you so much. I'll put your contacts in the description, and in the edited version of this, I'll put them up there for
Thanks
you
for
guys.
hosting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
beautiful. See you next time.
Bye.